male can make a decision what I do with my body absolutely blows my mind. And that, whether or not I'm a married woman or a single woman should have nothing to do with it either. And that if I want to have a child, it should be by choice.
Right.
I should not be forced. I am still of age where I could have a child. I am not at a point where I would want to begin that process all over again. And I need to have that body autonomy. That's my right to decide that, and nobody else should decide it. I don't make a decision for anybody if they want to be on Viagra or not, or if they want to get reconstructive surgery or some. I don't make that decision for anybody else. So nobody should be making a decision for what I do to myself.
And I agree 110%. As long as you don't expect the government to pay for it, then it's your say what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally down with that.
Mm-hmm.
Employment and pay. Where do we stand with this? Do you think there's sufficient progress? Do you think you're compensated fairly for what you do? And do you think that there is a threat to that looming?
I don't know. It's one of those things because, of course, at most places of employment, one of the rules is you don't talk about how much you make. So, you don't find out how much somebody else is making. So that's a really hard, I know, or I shouldn't say I assume within the company that I work in, there are people that work in the North Jersey facility that make much more money than the people in the South Jersey facility.
And that's unusual because of geographics.
Right, absolutely. But again, it shouldn't matter where I'm physically located because I'm doing just as much work as
there's certain factors
else.
Like cost of living and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That you have to factor
totally. I totally.
But compensation-wise, on a 1-to-1 ratio, are you being fairly compensated?
I really don't know, because it's one of the things that probably bad on me is I kind of stopped paying attention, because there's always these websites you can go to and say, how much does a person that does this job make? And the thing is, what I do for a living is kind of specific to my job, so it's kind of hard to say if I went someplace else where I could kind of try and figure it out. And I think I know I'm probably underpaid. Just one, because I'm,
is it because you're a woman, or because you're a one-of-a-kind person doing what you do?
I don't know. It might be a combination of both. We recently, at my company, had somebody who left the company who was a woman. I never asked her or found out how much she made. I knew she probably made more than I did, even though I've been with the company much longer than she had been. And we recently hired somebody who I knew was a grade level or a position higher than her. And I have a feeling probably started out making more than she did.
Okay.
So that's another,
So clearly we're not where we need to be.
No.
Leadership in government. So my question to you here is, clearly we're seeing progress certainly on the federal level. Mm-hmm. A lot of states are making progress with women in leadership positions. You personally, do you think the door is open for you if you wanted to get into, say, local politics? Do you think you have any obstacles with that? Do you think you'd be discriminated against because of your gender?
No. I think in a lot of cases it's still a boys' club when you come to, your local, but I'm sure there are some areas of the country where it's not like that. I've never been interested in wanting to run for a government position, so it was never something that I thought about, but I could see where I wouldn't, again, where we live, where we are. I'm sure if it was something where I started volunteering or doing things, I could, eventually see something.
What's interesting is of the 4 fundamental rights we talked about, 3 of these you attributed to some level of political influence on how it impacts you.
Mm-hmm.
That's disturbing. That women's rights are a matter of politics.
And they shouldn't be.
No, they shouldn't. And I think that is a highlight of where we are today. And it astounds me, and we're not going to pull any punches here. You're obviously a Democratic supporter.
I am? How did you know?
What astounds me is your experience, I would say, is pretty typical for most women. Democratic women or Republican women. But there are so many staunch Republican women that support a party that has, for over a century, had policies that were contrary to women's interests.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about people like that who would support someone who wants to hold you down? Like, is it I almost attribute it to like a beaten wife syndrome type thing.
Yeah. Where
they just accept their place as a lesser citizen in society.
And you have to kind of think that, there are still women that are young girls, women that are raised today to your only job in life is to raise the family and support your husband. And that's it. And I'm not knocking anyone that's what they want to do in their life. If that's
what you aspire to do, knock your socks off.
Right.
But don't hold other people back.
Exactly.
In the process.
But don't tell me that I can't do more.
Absolutely.
Or tell my daughter that she can't be more.
Yeah, that's my hang up about this whole thing. As much as I hate seeing how you are treated, it irks me to think that she's going to face some of these same prejudices. And it really pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do everything I can to make sure that she's got every opportunity.
And I'm so proud of what she stands for and what she believes in. And yes, a lot of it has to do with us, but there's a lot that, is her own, and I'm so glad that we raised her and are still raising her to be so open-minded to things. And she, in so many cases, is more open-minded than we will ever be. And that gives me hope that, she's also surrounded, she surrounds herself with people that feel that way too, and that generation will hopefully make a difference and bring about so much that more than we could ever hope for.
I'm also very fortunate that she's patient enough to help
educate,
carry me along in that journey.
Yes.
I've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot from her that I never thought I would learn.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take another break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at what some of the obstacles and threats are to these rights. We'll be right back.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com.
So, threats and obstacles to women's rights in America. And, we'll attack these rights as we've been doing in order. So the first one we're going to talk about is women's suffrage. So in the wake of the toxic 2020 elections, there's been a wholesale attack on voting rights. These attacks aren't targeted specifically at women and are designed to make it harder for people in general to vote. Not too much in general, but there's specific segments of the population that are targeted at. So some of the obstacles. 17 states have enacted 28 new laws that restrict access to voting by targeting citizens with disabilities. The fact that they're not including accessibility, common accessibility options to get into voting places that make it difficult for people with disabilities to vote. Mm-hmm. They're attacking absentee voting. After the 2020 election, when when absentee voting was done, because we were in the middle of a pandemic, a pandemic that the sitting president ignored for the first 4 months and downplayed it and pretended it didn't exist and created the crisis in the first place.
Right.
They're attacking provisional ballots. They're requiring voter ID, which there's nothing. Take a drink here. I'm joking to death. This is how much I hate these rules. There's nothing in the Constitution that says voter ID is required to cast your vote. Nowhere. So I don't know where they're coming up with that one. They're targeting voter registration. They're making it harder to register. Mm-hmm. They're requiring different requirements to now register. They're instituting registration purging. So normally with registration purging, if you don't vote in so many elections, they purge you from the voter registration. Well, that number of elections is usually like 4, 5, something like that, presidential elections. Now they're saying if you don't vote in the last one, you're not registered anymore.
Oh, see,
You need to register again to vote. They're restricting student voting, making it difficult for students, because before they would make it accessible to students to vote during student hours and stuff like that at colleges. They're restricting that. And they're limiting polling places to make it harder to vote. So people who are, again, disabled, infirmed, aged, people that don't drive, they're making them travel hours to get to a voting place to cast a vote, knowing that they won't vote because they're the people that they don't want voting because they're going to vote for the opposition.
Right.
So that's some of what we're looking at here. Not specifically against women, but affecting everybody.
Right. And you figure it's the lower income, more likely the people of color.
Yep.
That's the areas that they're really targeting.
Absolutely. So what's your next one?
Abortion. Somehow, after nearly 50 years, this is still a matter of debate. Instead of being an ideological discussion, anything to do with abortions has turned into a political discussion, which generally means that all logic is out the window with it. There is a real threat to women's reproductive rights with the recent leaked draft of the opinion by the Supreme Court that now wasn't just a leak, because now it has come to fruition that they have now overturned Roe v. Wade.
More on that. Later.
on.
Deep cleansing breaths.
Deep cleansing breaths. Okay. Let's go back to employment and pay. So on average, women earn 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns. And in comparing salaries over 350 jobs, women actually earn less in nearly all jobs. Women earn less than their same race and ethnicity, their counterparts at entry-level positions, of education attained as well. So the pandemic is estimated to have set the women's labor force back more than 30 years.
So there's that progress that we're losing.
That astonishes me that during the pandemic that even, happened. Finally, leadership in government. Again, we now finally have a woman vice president. How many years did that take? And then you even look back, how far was when the first vice president, female vice president, was in the 80s, late 80s, and then
Geraldine Ferraro.
Geraldine Ferraro.
Nomination,
never elected. And then you even had Sarah Palin, the second, never elected.
Right.
So it took 3 women, but how many years, obviously, to get to that position? Another interesting thing, for the first time in our history as a government, there will be 2 female signatures posted on currency in our country, because we will have the treasurer has Secretary of the Treasurer, and what's the other signature that's on the bill? I can't think of what it is, but that was something that came out in the news because of a newly appointed position. Top 2 women in money.
Right. See, and I'll tell you, while that's nice that we've gotten to that point, what annoys me is every time the press takes this is the first time a woman did this, and this is the first time a woman...
Right.
It annoys me that we're saying that.
Right. It's annoying that we have to say anything like that. And when you look at... Obviously, there are other countries in the world that will never have women in government. But then there are other countries that have had women in leadership and had women in politics so much longer, and they kind of look at us and go, how backwards are you?
And these women were incredibly strong, competent women who overshadowed their previous male counterparts by a long shot,
right,
in most cases.
So it just baffles me, with as progressive as we say we are as a country, we're so backwards than so much more.
Well, and the thing that annoys me when we say it's the first woman to do this, that fact doesn't annoy me. But what annoys me is that attention that we draw to it being the first woman to do that is the same attention that the detractors use. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you have a first woman in the Treasury, and look at what the economy's like, as if it's their fault,
right?
And they use that fact that they're a woman as justification for how things are and the state of, and it annoys me that they do that.
Right, and the other thing too is how many women had to do so many other things to get that person, to lift that woman up.
Absolutely.
To do that. That's the thing.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Absolutely.
And women like Kamala Harris was extremely complimentary and appreciative of all the women that came before her that gave her the opportunity that she has today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So lot of obstacles out there that we need to
We've
overcome.
come far, but we haven't come far enough.
Right. And it's almost like the old boys network, their attitude's almost like, all right, well, we threw you a bone. Now shut up and go away for a while. Okay. You're fine. Like they're terrified of having an equal playing field. And they think trickling little bits out here and there will keep the masses occupied and quiet them down when they get a little riled up, which is unfortunate. That's why you know, the one thing that I think might come out of this Supreme Court ruling is that a lot of rich white guys might not have a career in politics moving forward anymore.
Let's hope and pray.
We'll talk about
prayers
that.
and thoughts.
We're going to take our last break, and we'll talk about that when we come back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
So, women's rights are human rights.
Damn Skippy.
And as of yesterday, I think we've seen a significant encroachment upon women's rights.
You think?
So, this is our open discussion on Roe versus Wade and abortion in general. You have the floor, dear.
I don't even know where to
Rip into it. How about we start with just the hypocrisy of the Supreme Court's decision? Because the day before, they had a very contradictory decision.
Absolutely. They said that you could carry a gun, that it's okay to carry around a gun now. You don't need to conceal it anymore.
Right. So New York had some very common sense gun safety laws.
For over 100 years.
Designed to save lives.
Right.
Which the Supreme Court decided that was a constitutional violation.
Right.
Where if you read the Constitution and the Second Amendment, nowhere in there does it say anything about carrying concealed weapons by citizens.
Right.
It speaks entirely about pertaining to a well-regulated militia.
Right.
Which for some reason everyone seems to want to ignore that. So
right.
So
because it's all up for interpretation. Yep. That's what it is.
So the Supreme Court decides that we're going to do away with common sense gun law because it's against people's constitutional rights. But now you can't get an abortion.
Nope.
So we're preserving life on one side with overturning Roe versus Wade, but we really don't give a damn about it because you can carry guns and shoot anybody you want.
Right. So one of the memes, our government is bold enough to force you to have a kid, but is too weak to ensure that they make it to recess alive.
Yeah.
If that is not...
That's profound.
With between the past 2 days of the Supreme Court, that... How?
Yeah, it highlights the ludicrous level of hypocrisy coming out of today's Supreme Court.
Right. The fact that church and state is supposed to be separate, but yet the church has more say over my body, and I'm not a member of a church.
Right.
My religion... I am Jewish, if you didn't know. My religion states abortion is okay. because my life is more important than what is in my body, what is in my womb.
Yeah.
And until what is growing in my womb can live and take 3 breaths on its own, it doesn't have a choice over me.
Well, you could also interpret the 2 rulings from the Supreme Court of you can have an abortion as long as you don't mind getting shot in the process.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, there has been violence that has happened at clinics that aren't even performing abortions. Because that's the other thing, is that everybody goes after Planned Parenthood. Oh, they're doing all these abortions and da-da-da-da. That's not even their main purpose. That they are giving health care to women, and somebody going there just for a routine checkup is risking their life from these crazy psychopaths who are trying to save the unborn child, but yet are taking their gun to go kill people.
Well, and to play devil's advocate for a minute there, you have people who are pro-abortion who are also attacking anti-abortion clinics as well. So you've got violence on both sides. You've got crimes being committed on both sides. But if nothing else, that should simply highlight the level of passion involved here, that the decision that the Supreme Court made to overturn a previous Supreme Court decision, which, honestly, that's where I have my biggest problem, is the Supreme Court has basically made itself useless.
Right.
They decided that no matter what we decide, it doesn't matter because the guys 5 years from now can overturn it.
Right, and that's where now... Okay, so everybody's, kind of... you have the people that are like, oh, well, it's still at the state level and da-da-da-da-da, and now you can still travel to get to states even though they were passing laws saying that you couldn't, and that there were certain laws where, if the doctor performed one, they were gonna be jailed, and the woman who received it was gonna be jailed, and all this other... But this isn't where it's going to stop.
Right.
That's the thing that most people aren't looking at, is now that you've taken this away, now all these other rights of, gay and lesbian couples, you're seeing that there are people out there that are, get a hold of a lawyer, make sure everything is written and that you have legal documentation. If you have children, make sure there is legal documentation. Make sure you have copies of your birth certificates and everything, that both parents are listed. If you got married in a state that is in danger of overturning your marriage decision, I have various clergy friends that are now offering free to remarry you in a state that is protecting you. And the contraception, that's another thing that now, oh, thank God for Clarence Thomas, for everything. But you know what law he's not going to overturn is Loving, because that affects him, because he's married to a lovely white woman who... But all the recent things he's picking in, oh, well, I can't do that one, but I can do this one.
And this is the problem that I have, is that our current Supreme Court has turned into an activist court.
Mm-hmm.
And their job is to rule on the constitutionality of laws and situations.